What was the other disclaimer I was put? Oh, in the best interest of everybody health-wise because of the pandemic. Did I cover my legal obligations on that one?
Yeah, but I only caught half of it. You might want to do it one more time because I didn't hit the record button early enough.
Okay. I wanted to welcome you.
Add that to the motion to approve the agenda, just that when everybody votes to approve the agenda, that they're also affirming the need for conducting the meeting via Zoom.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Then I'll put that off then. Roll call, Mr. Moore or Ms. Kinzer.
Well, I think if anybody's logged on, they can see, but we'll call roll anyway. Kristen Parker.
Here.
Ms. Kinzer's here. Ms. Hopkins. Ms. Hopkins, unmute you. Unmute
She's here.
you. Okay. Fulbright, Moore,
Here.
Irvin,
Present.
Will, Sam,
Present.
Hooper,
Here.
Howell,
Here.
Lindsay, Mr. Dudley.
Here.
10 people here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cobb, I'll now turn it over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Very good. I'm going to share the screen, folks, and we'll have Pledge of Allegiance from Highland Elementary School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope everybody was able to hear and see that.
That was great.
Yes, thank you. And now we'll have a moment of silence to start our meeting. All right, let's continue on. We all have the agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Who was that?
Ms. Kinzer.
Ms. Kinzer makes the motion.
Second, Mr.
Seconded by Mr. Moore.
With the understanding that includes the reason for the meeting via Zoom.
You beat me to the punch. By approving this agenda, we are recognizing that we are meeting by Zoom under permission of the governor's executive order as a result of the best health interest of our county and its citizens and students, and as a result of the pandemic going on. So that's the tag along with the agenda. All those, how are we do we just do a voice vote, Shirley?
No, we vote.
Okay. Then I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote now.
And I didn't make the comment earlier, but everyone should have their agenda online pulled up so we can vote straight from the computer.
I don't have Ms. Hopkins.
Oh, she gave a thumbs up, it looked like.
Thank you. Ms. Hopkins.
There it is. I see it on the picture now.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a total?
100%.
All right. Unanimous passing of the agenda. Let's proceed. Any recognitions or announcements? Mr. Hickman.
Just real quick. Just want to remind everybody this week that we did pivot to our remote standing. We are continuing to monitor our numbers, and hopefully have a decision as quick as we can, but we want to make sure when we do that, that the decision is based on safety and best interest for kids too.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I have a question about that.
Yes.
Is that okay to speak on that now?
Is it about the COVID transition?
It's not. It's about just making sure. I know we have a lot of stakeholders that have been asking if we can articulate what that standard is. I know a lot of parents like to try to, I don't know, have a heads up beyond just a few hours. I didn't know really like if we were going to put out something kind of telling them what our procedure is with monitoring that. I just wanted to, yeah,
I think we'll cover that under other business under the COVID updates.
Sure, thanks.
Maury County Education Association, Ms. Inc.
Hi, calling from my car here. Chair Fulbright, Director Hickman, board members, I appreciate you always allowing MCA to speak on behalf of the employees in Maury County. I'd first like to give kudos to Doug Laconin and Michael Hickman working in the central office staff working so that employees feel a little bit more secure in having the leave available to them beyond what the federal government allowed us to have. That was much appreciated and set many minds at ease, as we already have teachers who are on COVID leave who didn't have to access it last semester. Hopefully we won't have to have a whole bunch of people more accessing it, but this is just the reality we're living in right now. And I think it set a lot of teachers and employees' minds at ease, especially when you also look at daycares still closing and schools closing and students being remote, and having that option to look out at the best interest for their family, their students, and themselves. I also like to offer some appreciation to Mr. Perriman and his staff for getting out our leave balances to the district, and for Mr. Hickman transitioning that over so that we do know our leave balances, and also communicating with employees about the paper that was promised to us, and that we still would be getting the sheet of paper and the documentation we requested, but they want to make sure that those leave balances are correct. One of the questions I've asked, and Mr. Hickman will get back to me, and he assured that, is vaccines for teachers. We're very excited that the state has opened that up quicker to teachers and employees in public schools, so that we have access quicker than we were anticipating. One of the other questions is, how is that going to look for us? Because we don't have the freedom to leave school in the middle of the day to go get vaccinated. There are times when we do have people come in to the schools and give us flu shots and other shots. And hopefully, I feel confident that Mr. Hickman is looking at that with the health department and how we can most effectively distribute the vaccines to people who choose to get them as educators. Also, it was interesting to see the mask policy come out. I think also looking at some of those, the survey results was interesting. And we appreciate the district taking into account both teachers and parents, because many teachers are also parents. Many employees are also parents and want to also have a say-so on both ends. What makes us comfortable as a parent may not make us, or what makes us comfortable as an educator, we may not always feel the same way as a family member. One thing another thing that I'd like to address is there were many self-contained special ed teachers who were excited to be able to have their kids back in the classroom with them, because these are the most needy students. There were some teachers concerned, there were staff concerned, as there always will be, but there were many who were appreciative of that opportunity. I know myself, I've had a couple kids come in today to do, bring in, as a special ed teacher, bring some kids in and work on in a drop-in situation. And that's good for some of those students who need a little bit more support than they can be offered online. One other concern that I would address is the TSSAA has come out with a statement regarding, because we do have coaches and schools that are having to pay money to officials. And the TSSAA has reduced the fees for those officials at this time. And apparently one of the assigning agents has requested schools to pick up the slack to take up the additional monies from what TSSAA is paying. Our concern with that would be every school does not have equal access to the monies coming in to pay those officials. And the concern is a lack of equity in officials coming to schools where we can't support those officials in the way that the assigning agency is asking them to do. So those are just some of our concerns, and so much more appreciation. This is really hard as we move to remote. Again, any teacher, any parent who can do this well while working another job, you have kudos from me because it is not easy. So again, appreciate the opportunity to speak as I appreciate, and also appreciate the continued positive relationship with the board and central office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any public delegations? We don't have a sign-up sheet, but I'm going to go with the fact I'm hearing silence to say that we do not. If I'm incorrect, somebody can correct me later. Staff reporting. Mr. Hickman, do you have any reports or any other staff members have reports?
I do have some staff reporting. First, I'd like to say that Mr. Scott Lindsay, our Chief of Staff, his last day will be this Friday, and we'll be sending him off with our many thanks for holding us together the last few months. We have replaced that position with Miss Jennifer Reed Gabbard, and we're excited to have her come on board. She is coming to us. She is a lawyer that has, that's passed the bar and currently works in HR. And so we're excited to have her come on board with us. Also, Mr. Lance Evans, our Whitthorne Middle Principal, did resign right before the holidays. We decided at that point the best fit for now would be to go ahead and place an interim, so that way we could be more mindful and take our time to find a better fit for Whitthorne. So we decided the best way to go now was to do an interim position. And so we announced that Dr. Kara Skaggs would be the interim position throughout the rest of the school year. We thought she was a great fit because, one, she already knows the issues and the things they are already doing over there, and she's already vested in Whitthorne, as she has her own child there as well. So we're very excited to have both those folks come on board, and one come on board and one to take a new role.
Thank you. Where did you say our new Chief of Staff is from? Someone local?
Yeah, she's a local girl.
Okay.
Right. She works for a local business.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. We have 9 items under the consent agenda. Are there any that need to be removed and discussed separately?
Motion to approve all.
Have a motion for Mr. Moore to approve all of them. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Second for Ms. Kinzer. Any other discussion on the consent items? Hearing none, we will vote.
Did you hear me?
No.
You did hear me?
No. What do we
sorry.
have?
Please vote now. You heard me then?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Has it come up? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I was able to cast my vote.
I must have. I probably did.
You did. The only one that I still see is Miss Hopkins again.
And she gave a thumbs up on her screen.
All right. I will put yes. Okay, that is it.
Okay. Unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda passes unanimously. On to new business. Under finances, Mr. Laconin or someone from his office here?
Yes,
or do we need
Mr.
him?
Bright, this is Chef Fry. I'm here. We just have the budget amendment that was asked at the work session to be put on the agenda for Kronos. This is stating that Kronos will be implemented starting February and then carry us all throughout the year. $75,000 from the fund balance is what the amount is on it. And we were all just, Mr. Hickman and Mr. Perryman were on the call as well. We were just at the admin meeting before this meeting electronically, and the admin committee did pass the request from our office to hire additional staff to implement Kronos for the schools for the next school year.
Okay, and
I'm open to any questions.
That then would come out of the county budget, those positions?
The positions will come out of the county budget, and Kronos will come out of the funds at the schools.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Move to accept.
I have a quick question for Shifra. Is this going to be, so next budget cycle, is it going to be 150,000 for the full year, or is this just getting us to 2021 budget year?
Correct. That is correct. This is the $75,000 is for February through June. And then, yes, so the next year, let me do that real quick. 75,000. So it's $15,000 approximately a month. So next year, yes, it will be for the whole year, which is $880,000 approximately. It's
okay.
Like 14 and some change is the monthly cost. And that was also the amount that Kronos quoted us on the previous amount of students and enrollment we had. And they are going to, so far as of right now, that's the cost that they are going to maintain. I'm not sure if we're going to have a new contract over the summer to start a new fiscal year, or if the contract that we had signed was for multiple years. I would have to check that and make sure. But this is for just getting us through February through June.
So with our current system that we have, what's the cost difference going to be between the current system and this system?
I do know that Kronos is more expensive because currently we do not have a timekeeping system. Because the Skyward would have came with True Time, but the schools never implemented True Time 4 to 5 years ago. Currently, we are using Smart Find Express. I would have to find the amount that we pay them, but I do know that they are cheaper than Kronos. Kronos is more expensive, but when we looked at the amount of needs, we did a vetting process last year when we first took over the schools. Amanda Alexander was the HR director at that time. We started looking at multiple softwares with her, and we looked at Kronos. We looked at what local government had to offer at that time. We looked at Smart Find Express. And because the schools were already having a lot of issues with Smart Find Express, we decided not to go with that software. The setup has already been done. The way it was set up, obviously it hasn't worked for the schools. So it's not one of those that you want to keep. So Kronos came out to be the one that was best suited for all of our needs. They have a lot of different options for people to clock in, clock out remotely. They have they have a side of the software that's developed completely for educational K through 12. And there's not a lot of softwares out there that have specialization in educational timekeeping. Another reason we went with Kronos was the county already uses Kronos as well. So that brings the county and the schools on the same softwares, as far as we are currently in the process of switching to local government as well. So that brings everything in the same area where the whole finance and payroll department will be trained and cross-trained on processes that are being done the same on both sides. If the exact cost of both the softwares, I can have that emailed, because I do not have that off the top of what we're paying for Smart Find Express right now. Mr. Hickman, do you know? Or
I'm here.
Oh, Doug's here. There you go.
Yeah. So the cost of the software, that's specifically what Smart Find is. It's more of a sub finder that just keeps track of balances. It doesn't submit timesheets, and we've had issues with it calculating submissions for time off. So Ready Sub basically fully replaces what Smart Find can do for about $11,000 cheaper per year. And it's a better software when it comes to reaching out to subs. You can choose preferred methods. You don't just have to receive a call or an email. It can also text, and subs can go in there and set their preferred method of being contacted, so that hopefully our fulfillment rate on subs goes up. When it came to vetting out the process of which time and attendance system we would use for Murray County, we reached out to many systems. I vetted out at Logic Force the full payroll system, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. We did this with central office staff as well. We demoed it to employees, demoed it to the MCEA, and ultimately the decision was made back in December of 2019 to move forward with Kronos. The school board also voted on that and agreed to do it back then. And so we vetted, there were more expensive options. For example, Paycom had a very good looking software, but there were some things that were missing, but it came down to Paycom and Kronos ultimately at the end of the vetting process. And Paycom was about $120,000 more expensive per year, and they could not work with a sub finder, and Kronos could. So we wouldn't have had as good of a fulfillment rate. Also, like Shifra said, there's a back to school specific initiative that Kronos came out with in 2018, so that it meets the needs of all employees that are in education, from the bus driver that has to clock in the second that they leave their driveway, to the office employee that's clocking in on their laptop, to even being able to have check-in features for safety, so that the managers can look at the software and see who is in their building at any point in time for safety reasons, if there's a fire or tornado drill or what have you. And I'm coming in kind of late on the meeting. I'm sorry, I was on the admin committee meeting, but if there are further questions, I'm happy to answer any of those.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any further comments or questions regarding this?
Motion to accept.
Have a motion from Ms. Kinzer to accept.
Second.
Second from Mrs. Hopkins, looks like. If there's no other discussion, we will go ahead and vote. Please vote. Ms. Hopkins gives us a thumbs up. What was the readout on that?
Everyone voted yes.
Okay, thank you. The unanimous vote, that is approved. On to instruction, Mr. Gaines.
Mr. Chairman, the next agenda item is just the audit contract that allows our auditors to audit school funds, and it is over $10,000. That's why it's for your approval.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, or I guess I need a motion first? Motion to approve from Mr. Moore.
Second, Mr. Sims.
Second, Mr. Sims. Any discussion or comments, questions? Hearing none, I think we're ready to vote.
Please vote.
Ms. Hopkins has given us a thumbs up.
Everybody, yes.
Okay, we have 10 yeses. It's a unanimous approval. Zoning and facilities is up next. Mr. Perriman, are you with us?
I am. We do not have anything for you tonight.
Nothing for us tonight. Boy, I'd love to hear that. Other business. Mr. Hickman, I'll turn this over to you for the COVID update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, a couple of meetings ago, we were asked by the board to start considering relooking at a mask mandate. Upon that, we brought forward the next meeting. We were asked also to looking at a survey for both our parents and teachers and employees. So we sent those out. We attached all of that to the agenda. The other thing I'd like to say is one of the big questions that's been coming to me is why are we wanting to attach this to the dress code? And the reason why is right now, if we were to approve any kind of mask mandate, so far the only one that has been taken to court, and Jake, if you want to help me on this, that has not been that has been accepted, or how, Jake, would you kind of want to explain that part?
Yeah, sure. The only case that I'm aware of in Tennessee that's gone up to be reviewed, at least by a trial court, involved a change to a dress code, and it was upheld by the court. Plus, that just seems to be the logical fit. So that was the thought process, I think, but behind initially making that a part of your policy and a part of the dress code policy.
Thank you, sir. And also, some of the things that I did want to bring to the attention to the faculty and staff, as well as the parent guardians. I hope that you were able to also look at the exact questions that went with the surveys, because sometimes those charts could be a little misleading if you didn't follow the questions as well. Upon study of it from the district office, you know, one of the concerns that we saw, one from the parent side, one was that we were asking parents, if we were to do a mask mandate, what would you bring your kid to school that if you already own remote? And we only had a little over 100 respondents that said they would come back. What was concerning is if we did have a mask mandate, that we did have over 700 parents that said that they would take their school kids out of school if we did go through with a mask mandate. Also, I want to highlight on the teacher survey, if you'll notice that 64% of the teachers were in favor of having some type of mask mandate. And then we were also to break it down to look at which grade bands would you consider it as acceptable. At that, me or my staff will be able to take any questions.
I'd like to ask a question.
Ms. Kinzer? Yeah.
First of all, I stood in line for 3 hours, and the person behind me is a parent, and she said that her child was going remote because we didn't have masks. And you know that I feel pretty strongly about this, and I do appreciate the fact that Ms. Urban suggested we do a survey. We've done the survey. The survey seems to be a little bit on the side of mask wearing and so forth. And I realize it's a difficult thing. I want to know, Director Hickman, what is your recommendation? You're the guy. You're who we're depending on to look at your staff and see what's best for them. I want us to be able to have school. Maybe we need to be remote this month with all things going like they are, but I want students in school as soon as they can be. And I want the staff to be safe, because here's the big problem is staffing the schools, having enough substitutes, being able to be safe for them. And then the other thing is that kids take this home to their grandparents, of which, of course, you know, Will can tell you my age, so there you go. I'm very cognizant of the risk it is to those older citizens and grandparents. So I don't particularly want everybody to wear masks, but I just think that when every physician that we hear, and I mean, every doctor, I wouldn't go to the hospital that I wouldn't expect everybody to be masked up and protected. Number one in safety is social distancing. I agree with that. Number two is to be able to wear a mask. And I want your recommendation, Mr. Hickman. What do you say that you think Maury County School needs to do?
I've stated before that my recommendation would be for us to do a complete mask mandate. However, one thing I do want to bring to light, if we did come up with some type of mask mandate, I would also like to have it go, at least let's produce a end date and look at it at that point and say, do we want to continue it for the rest of the school year? One of the things we're looking at now is with the vaccinations coming, that we know there is that hopefully the moment where we are seeing the other side of this pandemic. I feel that the only concern I still have is there is no recommendation right now for the vaccine for children under 16. So we're not sure where that's going to go or when that's going to change or when they're going to come out with the research for that. Some are telling us they're working on that right now, but that would be my recommendation at this time. Also, my recommendation would be, and I want to say this very clearly, my recommendation at this point is I want to be in line with what the board wants in this particular instance.
May I make a comment to you, since I think I still have the floor, and I won't keep it long, I promise, but my concern is teachers getting the vaccine. And I can tell you, for someone who spent Saturday in the cold, they ran out and there were no vaccines for this week as well. So when are our teachers going to be taken care of? And that's a big concern. If it's not going to be anytime soon, then it may be even more credibility to consideration for a mask. I would not want to pass a mandate that doesn't have an ending time. It needs to be a short-term fix if that's what we do. I'm not for this. I mean, we all want this to be over and everything get back to normal. But have you heard anything from the health department as far as what we're going to do about teachers?
Great question. First of all, we've talked to Tennessee Department of Health, and I believe part of the health and safety from the commissioners last night did as well. And we've also talked to our local. The Tennessee Department of Health at that level is wanting us to work, as we had already been doing, working with our health department, because they feel like we need to make sure that we set up a system that is, as he called it, pods, where it is a place where just teachers can go and get this vaccination. The problem we're seeing right now is, you're right, that limited number of vaccines that are out there. The health department, and by no means do I want to throw them under the bus, because they are doing a tremendous job right now trying to get, as they say, a shot in every arm. But they've also kind of taken the stages where it used to be 1A, 1B, 1C, 2, 3, 4, 5. Teachers did fall into stage 2. Now what they've done is move teachers up to 1B, and there's been some miscommunication what's happened. What the Department of Health has done now is they've taken the 1A and they've made it 1A1 and 1A2. Different counties are allotted different amounts of vaccines. We've seen different counties already have those vaccines for their teachers. Our county has not had those vaccines given to them. With that said, I'm going to call Mr. Pointer, because he has been our direct contact on talking to the health department, and kind of tell you some of the planning and some of the things that they have discussed. And Mr. Pointer, I think I did see you on here earlier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, after the call, Mr. Perriman and Mr. Lane and myself have had conversations about how we could logistically roll this out. The health department is still trying to get through phase 1A. So our conversation to them was about, how specifically we could do 1B. We have some concerns, as you just mentioned, Ms. Kinzer, about, you know, a group of teachers standing in line, and then of course, obviously running out of vaccines. And I think Ms. Inc. also mentioned as well, logistically, you know, so many teachers and how that would impact schools trying to get vaccinated. So we are in conversation right now about using various locations and sites to give the vaccine for those who want it, and also possibly utilizing emergency management to help us coordinate that effort, because it is going to be a large effort, and just trying to coordinate that the whole thing across the county, because we'd have to coordinate it with how we're going to do with schools being open, where individuals would actually get vaccinated, and things of that matter. So myself, Mr. Perriman, and Mr. Lane are kind of talking through those logistics and in conversation with those parties.
Any other thoughts or comments on this while we're on it?
Mr. Fulbright.
Yes,
Ms. Irvin, I would like to make a few comments if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right, do I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to, you know, obviously, you know, my concern is definitely for the teachers. I never want to minimize that, because, you know, we appreciate them and we want to make sure their health is utmost. But I also want to share thoughts that do weigh on my mind as well, because for every concern I have for a teacher, I also think about the children. And I think about all aspects. And like I say, this has like been something that's been heavy on my heart, because I don't want it to appear that we don't care. But what I want to show too is how it might impact kids. And I've had a lot of parents come up to me and tell me different things and different thoughts. And when we make this decision about whether to mask or not mask, these are the children I want you to think of. And again, I know we said that we're going to give potential outs for different special ed populations, but with that, we need to make sure how that's defined if we do give outs for populations. And then we do also have to think about if we do that, are we then identifying our special ed or medical compromise? Because like, for instance, parents with ADHD children, I've had some parents tell me about how they know their children and they know how they fidget and play. And anything that they have that's another distraction, then it's going to be on their face. They're going to be playing with it, fidgeting with it. Some kids, that's going to help distract from the learning process. I'm not saying all, but that is a potential. And then two, some parents have been like, if you're forcing it, a lot of people, even doctors have stated that the way it's transmitted definitely is like from touch, like touching your face, getting your mouth, your eyes. And then are we, you know, with them having that on their face, I mean, I don't know if that's increasing the chance of them getting those germs near their mouth. And again, I've always talked about the sensory children, children who just cannot wear them. I had another parent bring to my attention children who suffer from anxiety, panic attacks. I've even been told by some adults that some people who've either suffered like post-traumatic stress, or they're claustrophobic, or they have these different conditions that maybe the majority of the general public don't deal with, but when they feel that confinedness over them, then it creates, like I've had some people, adults say that they've had a panic attack in the middle of a store just from that. And I'm not saying that that's all, and I know it's definitely, but I do think that these are real things. Another thing we have not talked about, like the one thing I did see, and I do not see it attached to this agenda, maybe I'm overlooking it, but I haven't seen a well-defined policy. What I did see come out early on, it said something to the effect that children would wear them all day long. Well, here's my problem with that, is that I guess because I've been in bad situations before where I've seen the best and the worst of people, I know it's common sense that they take it off at lunch. I know that that's common sense, but what may not be common sense is if a kid's having a panic attack and they have to take it off to get a breath of air. You know, what we then put those children into the hands of is basically the discretion of those in charge. And some will be 100% to the rule, you have your mask on no matter what. And there's some that will allow for that compassion factor, but that's an issue. I've looked up even like OSHA standards, CDC standards, and even CDC says they say that it's only effective if it's worn appropriately. So then if we pass this mask mandate, are we going to have teachers then having to police, oh, it fell down below your nose, get it up? And then what about the kids with glasses where they've got it over, you know, their nose and it's fogging up their glasses? Then what do we do? I just see all of these variables that could potentially come to line and create more headache and more problem. And I don't want to talk about me, but I mean, I see a pulmonary doctor currently. I've got bad lungs, and if anybody should be terrified of this, it's honestly me. And because I mean, my lungs are compromised already. But my point is, and maybe that's why I'm sensitive to it too, because when you see me in stores, I'm a pro-choice person. That's what I am, pro-choice on masks. But when you see me in a store, I have a mask on because I want to be sensitive to those who are older or who are medically compromised. But sometimes even then I have to get to a corner and just like pull it out and breathe, or, you know, rest my lungs, because it is heavy and hard on me to breathe in a mask. And maybe that's why I'm so sensitive to this. But anyway, I know I'm going on and on, but I just want you to realize that what's scary for me is that we live in a world that we think it's a one size fits all. And unfortunately, and we should know that especially as educators, there are unique situations that do play in. And that is my concern, is who's going to be policing this? How's it going to go? Are we going to have compassion on those kids? Another factor is like kids in PE. It's even been like, I think I've read so much because I've wanted to be fair to all populations. I don't know if it was the CDC or who, but it talked about like when a kid is masked and they have like, you know, like even in our sports, we don't make kids wear masks, but then like what happens if they're, you know, they have chest pains or they become labored and they're breathing, or all these other factors. Well, being a teacher, and most of you even being parents, you know, there's different kids. You've got those kids that are rebels and are like, I can't breathe, I'm going to pull this down. But you also have those kids that are scared to death and want to be the most compliant little angel ever. And I could see kids like that being afraid to speak up against their mask if they're having true health problems. And that's my hesitation on it, is there's so many situations. And then what do we do if we have a kid pass out because we've enforced a mask mandate and now they're having to wear it to be at school? And now and that's been my stance all along, is we're not the medical professionals. And when we put this mask mandate in place, we're expecting teachers to then validate whether they think a kid needs it or not. And what if they make the wrong decision and it hurts a child? And then we've got a lawsuit. But I don't want to say, because I like I say, this has been a struggle for me. So I don't want people to think that my only concern is that, but I want you to realize that's why I just really believe to each their own. I mean, me personally, I could get behind and support an in and out mask mandate, get where you're going, pull it down, let these kids breathe. But 8 hours a day, no room to breathe, that's a real concern for me for all the reasons that I have mentioned. And then additionally, I do want to state that I am very thankful that we're working with the health department to try to get our teachers and faculty the vaccines. I appreciate you guys trying to do everything we can to get that to them effectively. But with that, I also, and I'm sure this is a given, but I just want it to go on record for saying, I hope that we are given, and we will always give those employees freedom of choice. I hope we're not going to make it a requirement that they get vaccinated. I hope we let that be each person's freedom to do. That's pretty much my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hickman, I got just a clarification question on a couple different items.
Yes, sir.
Under the discipline, and I know I should know this, but would you clarify for me what extended learning is? For the third offense, or for the second offense of a dress code violation?
Okay, the extended learning, usually that we kind of try to match it up to our current one. And a lot of times the extended learning can mean anything. And Scott Gaines, if correct me if I'm wrong, can be anything from a detention or possibly having them for a detention or come in like during one of their other class period times.
So detention, basically, then. Okay.
I think our intent, Chairman Fulbright, was trying to as a second offense. We will continue to look at, how it works, and we may have to make adjustments. And I think that's why we wanted the title of the procedure that's attached to the dress code policy.
Okay, so just so I'm clear on this, if we have a third grade student takes their mask off one day inappropriately, they're giving it back to them and the parents contacted, correct?
So I think as we work through these, we would do to the normal things. I think they would have to look at the situation. They may, ask the student to put their mask back on, or the student lost their mask. We're always going to try to, if a student doesn't have a mask, our first thing is to try to give them a mask.
Right. And that's what I'm just going through the policy, so I understand it. If I'm enforcing it as a teacher, I want to know what I'm doing. Second offense, a month later, the child takes their mask off and doesn't put it back on after being asked. They have extended learning for one day.
And again, I think it's going to be the situation dependent. If there's a
but that's getting on a slippery slope when you're talking policy now. Third offense, a month later, first week of March, third week of March actually, does it again. Now they're 2 days extended learning. Comes the middle of April, they're back from spring break. Didn't bring their mask, don't want to wear a new one. Now they have 3 days of extended learning. Am I correct in my understanding of the possible?
If they followed directly the policy, remember part of that is we're
about following policy now.
Yeah, well, following that procedure, and there's always in our discipline policy, there's always a range of, we have the opportunity to apply a range of disciplinary options. We're just putting those there as we said, this is a draft procedure, and we're presenting those as what we think right now would be the most appropriate thing right now.
Okay, let me just ask another wording question on this. Under middle and high school and under third through fourth graders, it says that they should wear a mask. When I go into Taco Bell, I should wear a mask there too, but I don't. So are we not taking the stance that word should be must?
Yes, we will change that definitely to must. And that was one of the things when as we were asked to put the policy on, we sent that out to principals, and that was one of the things we saw. So we would change both of those to must. And remember, that must be when social distancing is compromised, is where we would ask students to put their masks on.
All right, I'm going to take a break before I say something stupid. Thank you very much.
May I speak? Ms.
Kinzer.
I just want to remind the board of something. And before the new board came on, we had a pretty lengthy discussion, emotional discussion actually, about changing the COVID, our plan to say shall. Okay, it didn't pass, but we asked Jake to weigh into that, which he did. And he said that he would recommend that we have a mask mandate because it would mean we've done everything we can to mitigate those problems. This was what his recommendation was. And I just want to remind the board of that. I understand we can come up with every kind of scenario under the sun as to how someone might do this. I think that as a teacher, I think that you've always got to think in terms of what is best for kids. And there are going to be situations where you've got a young one who's got a mask on and he may have need to take it off. I don't think a teacher's going to be strictly to that. I don't know. But I know that common sense in teaching is the main thing. I mean, any teacher that doesn't use common sense doesn't need to be in teaching. So I just want you all to think about the legal ramification, that it's a short-term fix. It's a way in which we can provide as much protection as we can for mostly our staff, because we know at this point that children are not as at risk as teachers and adults and their grandparents. So just to bring that up, I don't know. I hope every other board members will speak to this.
Ms. Parker.
I was curious. I know, Mr. Hickman, you mentioned earlier that there were 700 people who indicated that if we did adopt a mask mandate, that that they would choose to transition their children to remote learning. Do we have any information on the number of people that chose remote learning for the last semester based off of our decision not to have a mask mandate?
Yes, right now, and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's right at 3,600, I believe. And
thank you. I just want to say, I know that we all can have very differing opinions on this. I think for me, my overarching hope is that we're going to do whatever we can to keep kids in school. I think we've heard from the director that that was something that he felt would be helpful. Let's give him the tools. Let's give our teachers the tools they need to teach our kids. I personally think that we have spent the last 4 months, and those that did not want to wear masks, they did not have to wear masks. They could if they wanted to. They didn't have to. And there were a lot of parents that I heard from that did keep their children home. If that's the decision that people want to make because they feel like their freedoms are being violated, I respect that. But I also feel like those other parents have had 4 months of homeschooling their children. So I don't have a headache and I'm full. I hope that we'll
But I don't have a headache and I'm full. So
all right. I think we got somebody who's not muted.
Sorry. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Parker. Sorry.
I'm good.
Okay.
I think that I do appreciate the procedures that were laid out, and based off of the request that was made by the board to send out this survey, I think we're going to have a hard time getting input from parents, teachers going forward if we're not willing to listen to them when they've given us their direction. I think when you sit back and you try to analyze every single possible scenario, you're right. We're never going to have a policy, but we probably shouldn't have a policy going forward on anything for our school system if that's the route that we're going to take. I think that we just need to try to use common sense and try to do what we can to educate our kids the best way that we possibly can. And I think we all agree that having them in school is the best way. So let's just try to see if we can keep them in school and keep our teachers in classrooms so that they're able to teach. That would be my preference.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Fulbright.
Yes.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
So here's my question too, and I mentioned this at the work session, and we keep saying, let's keep our kids in school. Remind me again how this keeps our kids in school, because it doesn't change our quarantine policy, correct? We're still going to contact trace and we're still going to make kids quarantine. I mean, if we make a mask mandate the thing that we're going to do, how does that keep our kids in school?
Mr. Hickman?
Once again, is masks the cure for this? No, by all means. And I would never go on record saying this is going to cure it all. What I do look at is what's presented to us, and what it shows is this is a preventative measure that will help stop the spread of COVID. Is it 100% foolproof? No. However, what we do know, and I forgot who was talking about, I think it was Miss Irvin, was talking about, how they get it through contact. Well, that's part of the mask procedure. Is we're hoping that if a child does have COVID-19 and is not aware of it, that when they have residue from coughing, sneezing, or whatever bodily fluids that come from their mouth and noses, that it would be captured in their mask. So therefore, we would hope that this would be another preventative measure that would help continue to keep not just our kids in school, but also our teachers, because we do have teachers out there on the line that could possibly be getting COVID from their students. So this would be another preventative measure to help keep the teachers in school as well, which at the end of the day helps us keep kids in school, because as all of you know, most of the schools that we have had to pivot to remote has been because we had a lack of staffing. So can I guarantee you that that's going to happen? I cannot. I wish I could, but I do feel like I would be remiss if I didn't try everything I could to try to make that happen.
So one more thing I want to ask, just to be clear, that if we adopt this policy, the repercussions for the child is if they don't comply, they're going to be disciplined, correct? It's a disciplinary action.
Yes, ma'am. There will be consequences as we would have it attached to a policy to go with our dress code.
So my next question is this: do we have masks in play for our population?
Mr. Perryman, can you quote the number of masks that we have in storage right now? I think he's on here, but we have a sizable amount in our houses, but I want to be fair and get that number to you guys.
And my last,
go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
My last question is, if this comes to play, what is going to be our term limit on this? I mean, I personally think once we've allowed our staff to become vaccinated, then it should be resolved, would be my thought, but that's just my one thought. I think that concludes my questions for this.
Mr. Fulbright, may I have?
Yes,
so the thing about it is, even if everyone's 100% vaccinated with both of the shots, because you have to have 2 shots, then you're only at about a 95% chance of not getting it. Unfortunately, though, that's just for this one strain. We've already had a second strain coming out of Britain. I don't know when or if it's going to hit America. It will.
It already has.
Okay, so it already has. And we do not have a vaccine for that strain. So this isn't going away. This isn't, oh, everybody's vaccinated, we can take the mask off now. Unfortunately, wearing masks and social distancing, and I think this is just something we're going to have to deal with for a while. I will say an interesting side effect is cases of the flu have seemed to be going way down. I don't know what that's, I don't know why. Could be because we're being more sanitary. We're using things, we're wearing face masks, we're doing things that we may have been interested in doing a long time ago. So with that being said, I don't, you can believe the science or not believe the science behind it. I feel that there is enough data to support that wearing masks does reduce illness, whether it be COVID-19 or the flu or the common cold or whatever. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay.
I'll try to be brief, as brief as I can, but I keep coming back to, on this topic, I've yet to hear a doctor say that it's a bad idea to wear a mask. Every doctor I've heard speak on this subject tells us we should wear a mask. Every doctor office you go into, you're required to wear a mask. Every hospital, if you're unfortunately have to go there, you have to wear a mask. So I don't know why we would go against the experts when they tell us that we need to wear masks. And and I'll try not to comment on everything that's been said, but we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not the first school district to talk about masks. Mask mandates have been going on all year long. All these hypothetical situations, they've been dealt with or they haven't happened, one of the two, since August. So we're not reinventing the wheel. This is not something new. Surveys got put out. They were asked to be put out by this board. The data we see that came back to us is not what I thought we would see, to be totally honest with you. But when we look at that data, when we look at those surveys, our teachers and staff overwhelmingly are in favor of a mask mandate. And then to my surprise, the majority of those 4,500 people that replied to the survey from parents and stakeholders, they also want a mask. So, when I think about that the professionals tell us we need one, when I think about that the majority of the people we heard from in our survey say we want one, I can't vote any other way. So I'll let everyone else speak, but I'm willing to make a motion whenever you're ready for it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Couple questions, Mr. Hickman and Mr. Lindsay. I'll let you know. My doctor told me that wasn't necessary. When I walked into the office, they said, "Take this thing off. You don't need it here." Mr. Hickman, am I correct in my assumption that if we were to not pass this dress code change, you could implement a mask mandate tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes, I could, but I have two problems with doing that. One being the aforementioned where Jake and I had discussed where so far the only way it's been challenged and has succeeded in court has been through a dress code, which is policy. And two, I just feel that I need to be on the same page as my board members.
And we do appreciate that. And I appreciate that. When was this added to the agenda?
Which part?
The mask dress code change.
The actual policy.
When was it uploaded to the agenda on the website that the public would be able to see?
We did that today upon request.
So there was no way anybody in the community would have known that we were going to have this discussion tonight, unless they've been to every work session over the last little bit, or sit at home and watch work sessions on YouTube.
Or took the survey.
Did it say on the survey that we would vote on it in January? I didn't pay that close attention. I answered it, but I didn't see that on there.
No, it did not. And we had talked about from our last work session to do a special call. The special call to vote on it never came to fruition. And at that point, we were left with, let's put the results on there and kind of get a directive from.
Well, and I think the reason that the special call never gained a lot of traction is because we wanted to make sure we had ample support and input from the community. And the survey is a great move, and I'm glad that we see what the numbers say. But yeah, I mean, 1:33 this afternoon, this was placed on the agenda.
Can we ask Jake if we can address it at this meeting legally?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Ask Jake the fact that we have had the survey up and you've got attachments that are all attached to the agenda. Is this not part of that? Can we take action on it? Ask a lawyer. And also, Ms. Hopkins she is having difficulty with while I have I'm sorry, but she has texted me saying, I just wanted to say that masks may also be helpful with containing flu, colds, as stated. In schools, teachers or health personnel need to get creative about teaching skills about hand washing, gelling in and out of classrooms so they can remain in school. Sometimes when you teach kids the why, they get on board with the how. Thank you. She's a healthcare professional, so I'm just sharing that from her.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Ms. Hopkins, we appreciate your input on that. Mr. Williver, do you have any input on the agenda, way it was presented to us through this agenda?
It's a regularly called meeting, so everything's wide open. I mean, you guys aren't limited necessarily by the agenda that's posted. So could it be taken up tonight? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
I just think we've made a very big stink over the last month or two about things coming in at the last minute. And this seems to be in that ballpark too.
Mr. Fulbright.
Yes.
I want to just add, I'm ready to make a position on this as well, but I will say that I share your thoughts that I feel like maybe the general public does not know. That's one reason why I wanted this survey. This probably isn't the place, but I do want to say it did heavily concern me that this went out at 10:10 on a Sunday morning. A lot of people were in worship. A big portion of our county are church-going, worshiping people. And just seeing people out and about, I do know that what I would like to add, I know this is not the place, but I do think that we need to limit our communication, especially on Sundays, to not happen before 1:00 p.m. and try to do that outside of standard worship times. But even with that, I know a lot of people did not answer this call because it was at a bad time it came in. A lot of people, like when I saw them and I asked everybody I know, did you do the survey? And they're like, what survey? People's minds were turned off because it was on Christmas break. People were thinking, you know, what's my kid's school calling? I mean, we don't go back for 2 weeks. And I think there's a lot of people who would have had no clue this was even coming if it hadn't have been for the survey. And I think that even with the survey, there's a lot of people who didn't prioritize it or pay attention to it because of the timing for multiple factors. But I think my position's clear on this, but I feel like it's not going away. And I mean, if Jake thinks it's legal, I mean, I think the time is now just to go in and get it behind us. But what I do want to also mention is if this passes, when is it going into effect? Because here's another thing. I know we're on remote for the rest of this week, but we have to, at least I'm guessing, we're going to have to make clauses for those that are medically exempt. And not everybody's going to be able to run out to their doctor on Thursday or Friday of this week and get that. We're going to have to give the public time to, I mean, this is not just something a parent can sign an excuse. If that's the case, then yeah. But if we're going to make medical exemptions, we need to think it through of what we're doing. I mean, I would dare to say we need at least a 3-week time period to give people adequate time to get in, see their doctor, evaluate medical exemptions, because again, we're not the medical professionals. And there are those that have reasons why they cannot wear a mask. And that's why I will state again, this is not a one size fits all. And I do really appreciate Natasha's comments that Miss Betty read. That is so spot on. I think we need to do our part to help educate our kids. But anyway, just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Mr. Lindsay, I saw your hand go up just a minute ago.
From our work session that we had back before Christmas, I was fully expecting this to be on our agenda, and I think surely every other board member knew that this was coming up. We talked about it extensively. Why it didn't get placed on the agenda as a specific topic, I can't answer that. I don't create the agenda. But I think I saw on a Facebook page that had quite a few comments where it was announced that we would be voting on this. This is part of the COVID update. And, you know, I don't think we're blindsiding anybody by talking about this tonight. And I don't think we're out of line at all. I think we got a ton of feedback, 4,500 responses to a survey. Is a good amount of responses, and maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but I think we got quite a bit of feedback on that.
Thank you very much.
If I may,
Yes, Ms.
I'll tell you
Irvin.
something else that concerns me. And that's why I know that it was also sent out for the teachers to do their survey. But here's the thing, just to be fully transparent, those did not come out at the same time. One come out on a Sunday and then the other come out, at least I know, a day or so later. I'm not a teacher, so I didn't get that. I can't speak for the accuracy of that. But what I did see on Facebook, and a lot of parents saw on Facebook, even people screenshotting it and sending it to me, is a lot of our staff commenting very openly about their opinions, which I totally respect. Our staff totally needed a place to express their thoughts. But even some teachers complaining that they wish they could do it, and teachers saying, well, just go make a survey for every one of your kids. They're your kids too. And teachers commenting good ideas. I have screenshots of that copy to me. So another thing that was questioned was the legitimacy of these surveys. So for what that's worth, I mean, I don't know. I wish there was a way we could have tracked these. I wish there was a way we could have, instead of just putting it out to the general public, we could have made sure that Marlena Irvin, who has 2 kids in Santa Fe, got this survey, and not just Joe, somebody who decided to fill out a survey. So I agree, we did get those surveys, but again, I don't know. There's a lot of, yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I was also wanted to talk a little bit about the survey itself. I was curious because it's all posted on Facebook, so I clicked on it, and when I was allowed to take it, it was a little bit weird for me because I'm neither a student, parent, or guardian of anyone in our schools. So I took it and I submitted it, and I assume it counted. So then I was even more curious, and I took it again, and I believe it counted the second time as well. I stopped at 2. I think I could have done more because I had read that other people were doing the same. Which is, I mean, totally logical. I know why they would do it. But just in terms of the entire thing, I'm ready to vote for either way, whatever we decide. But I do have a clarifying question. I think it's been talked about briefly throughout all of this, but I am wondering, with the mask mandate in the class, if the student does test positive, to what extent, I imagine the contact tracing wouldn't change at all. Everyone who was in close contact would have to go home, correct? Does anybody know the answer?
Mr. Hickman?
Yes, I believe those same rules stay in place, unless Chris Pointer, unless you've heard anything different.
No, I haven't heard anything different.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, then that would be one of the things that I'm curious to see, is it may actually stop the spread, but it doesn't actually keep the kids who are not sick in the school, which I think is the main problem that we're all trying to fix here. But if it does come to this, I'd like to know the duration of the mask mandate, because I'm totally fine with it happening if that's the will of the board and the people, and that seems like it's what it is. But I don't always like taking macro data from the nation and the federal level and applying it to our micro down here. I would prefer if we were able to keep this on a short-term duration and then evaluate the results and then make a decision that actually fits our community. So whether it be 2 weeks, a month, or whatever it is, and we get data back that shows that there is no difference, or if there is, it's a small difference and it doesn't, and it's not enough to justify it, then I would like for us to reevaluate it then, if that be the case. But I do want to know the duration that you guys have in mind for this.
Just to clarify, there is no duration listed in this this suggestion.
It could be in the motion.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, this is Will Sims. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Hickman, I know we're having trouble with the teachers with either contact tracing and them actually having it. Do you think that a lot of that is transmitted student to teacher, or are we having trouble with teacher to teacher transmission because they are supposed to be wearing masks? Or do you know any facts on that?
Are you speaking of contact tracing or teachers actually becoming COVID positive?
Both, I guess. Yeah.
Contact tracing, once again, once the teacher is contact traced, they have an option. Our board has really worked well with the teachers, I believe, to give them the option because we consider ourselves early in the year to be critical infrastructure, essential employees. So teachers have the opportunity to say, I'm going to go ahead and stay. And with the thought of if I show any symptoms in the next 14 days that I have to go home, or they could go ahead and say, I just don't feel comfortable with this. I want to go ahead and go home for the duration. And some chose not the full duration of the quarantine. When we start talking about positive cases, I am just not the medical expert. And that was one of the reasons I was glad that our state government stepped in and came through with the liability waiver, because we're just uncertain where a person gets it. The only way you can know for certain is if that teacher, you would never know, did they get it from a student or a teacher? We don't know because so many people have it, are asymptomatic. Do we have a idea that some teachers may have gotten it from somebody because somebody later on they were around, that was the only person? They can believe so, but once again, it's very tough to really, it's very tough to say with certainty where somebody gets COVID. It just really is. And I wouldn't want to go on record saying, I know this to be a fact they don't, or I know this a fact that they do.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if, there had been an outbreak due to staff meetings or, a certain group of teachers or, anything like that.
I will say I do have knowledge at the beginning of the year. We did have two at the very, very beginning of the year that we did have two schools that it did become apparent that somebody did have it. And that those two schools had a great amount of teachers that were considered quarantined. And with that, it kind of went along with one of the services the schools was using for professional development after getting to the bottom of it. And Mr. Gaines has reached out almost immediately when we found that. And we spoke to the professional development company about it. But since then, no, I couldn't be with certainty that happened.
Okay. The other question at the work session, I had asked if the admin could get together some numbers, talk to other counties who have implemented it to see what kind of results other counties have had. I think Williamson, Wilson, other counties have had a mask mandate in place. Do you have any stats or know any data from those?
I did reach out to a couple of those that I do have knowledge of, and also it's kind of open record that there are 3 districts that did have mask mandates that are close to us, and a 4th one that's in West Tennessee that's similar to us that all have mask mandates. The 3 that I did reach out to are still having some of the same problems that we are having staffing issues, as well as what they consider breakouts of COVID. And speaking to one for sure of the districts, it's hard once again, because once kids and students and the adults do leave school, we have very little control what happens outside of the school building. And, we've had that too, where we have been told individuals were out at a party and they all had COVID and we're going to miss. So that is one of the areas that it's just so hard to tell, even talking to these mask mandates. Our county above us, they have one. And the one thing that I will say, that listening to them, there's a big difference in a mask mandate and an enforcement of a mask mandate. And I think that had been some of the problems I know one of the county was having.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I just have one quick question. I'm assuming that hallways, buses, cafeterias are areas that are not able to be social distanced. Are we able to social distance within the classrooms?
The classrooms, most of them, we are not.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Hickman? Seeing none. Mr. Howell, are you gesturing?
Mr. Lindsay would like to speak.
Mr. Lindsay.
I'm ready to make if everybody's done, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Go motion away.
All right. Make a motion we approve the attachment policy 6.310.1 but adding to that first line at the end of that first line, removing that period and making that a comma, and where it says unless medically contradicted, comma, participating in physical education, comma, and eating or drinking. And that's my motion, as well as to set aside the posting, so this would go into effect immediately.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Just to clarify that we would be voting, if you vote yes, to implement a mask mandate for children in grades 3 through 12, with the exceptions that Mr. Lindsay just said, with no end date listed in the code, and with the disciplinary actions as listed at the back.
Mr. Chairman?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
As a board, we can change a policy at any board meeting. So we can certainly review it 30, 60, 90 days out. But we're changing a policy, and so we have the ability to change that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because several people had said that they would only feel comfortable with it with a end date in mind, but just want to make sure that everybody knew that was not in there. If there are no other clarifications,
Mr. Chairman, I have just a comment real quick. I'll keep it brief.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I think everyone kind of knows my opinion on this. I've made it quite clear as we discuss this. I just want to go over a couple of things. And I appreciate some more information on this. And what I saw from the surveys were similar to what we're seeing on the board right now. A wide variety of opinions and views, concerns, fears from all directions. That's what I saw more than anything else. But I just want to go back over one thing. We still have no data showing that a mask mandate will change how often we're in school. I've asked for that. No one has been able to show that. I think it's been pretty clear when the directors talk to other districts, not only who have had a mask mandate in their schools, but a mask mandate in their entire county. And they have not seen an increase, any kind of increase in the days in school. So that's just, again, if we're looking at data, it's just not there. I do have another question to go with this. Were this to go into place, we still do not have a mask mandate for staff. Is that a part of this discussion, or would there be one in place that mirrors what's for students?
Can I speak to that, Mr. Fulbright?
Yes, sir.
Per what I'm talking to Jake, one of the things that I do have the authority to do is to order that the make a mask mandate for employees, which I have reached out to principals and made them aware that that is something that we are to be doing.
You're saying if this passes, or whether this passes or not?
Whether it passes or not for staff only.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you.
I've got a question on that, just real quick.
Yes.
About the staff. Are we allowing our staff to socially distance from their kids and then demask? Because I could imagine that there will be times that it's hard for them to project to some kids. Absolutely. And then be heard audibly. Is that something we're giving our staff an option on too?
Yes. The wording that we've used is to wear a mask when you're unable to social distance.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, are there Any last comments or questions? If not, I believe we're probably ready to vote on this. I believe we would be ready to vote.
Please vote.
Ms. Hopkins is giving a thumbs up.
Six nay, 4 yes.
Okay, so the dress code change does not pass. Continuing on with COVID update. Mr. Hickman, we had discussed at the last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I could real quick, this is not related to that. It's actually on the same topic of the COVID update, but it's not related to the vote we just took.
Okay, that's where I was going to. We're staying on COVID updates.
Oh, okay. I just had some additional questions on the broader scope of that, but if you have, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I wanted to ask, we had implemented some new metrics for determining percentage when we close schools or not.
Yes, sir.
I guess we haven't really had a chance to implement that yet since yesterday was, well, actually, we haven't been back in school yet. I have heard some complaints that this doesn't take into the fact that most of our children and adults don't live in a school bubble, that we do need to take into consideration the surrounding areas. So I promised I would relay those concerns. I haven't really decided one way or another what I think of it, but I wanted just to express that and kind of get a feedback from you on that.
All right, thank you. That's a great question. I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to talk about the new metric. Obviously, right now we don't have a baseline because we are out of school. So we will continue to gather community, which we feel good with using the community, because one of the problems why we switched over with our new metric was working with the health department, looking at the community number. They were telling us in advance that the numbers that we were searching for, that 965, that they felt that that number was being reached in some instances up to a week before. But they were unable to provide that data because they felt that the test was being bottlenecked. They told us that at any given time, it could be 200 or more cases incorrect in the way of how many positives there are. So at that point, we wanted to be able to have a more safe and definitive way to say, when do we need to do a district pivot? We took our actual student numbers, and the reason, and I'll get to in a second why we want to stay with student numbers. We took our actual student numbers and we aligned them to what we were seeing in the community. Once we took those numbers, we saw the uptick sometimes a day, sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3 days. If we were using the metric we were using now, that would have pivoted us to show us that not only had the community hit a threshold through just looking at our students and talking to the health department, they felt as well that kind of aligned when the numbers really were that high. To give you an example, we found using the student numbers that not only would we have pivoted earlier, specifically looking at Thanksgiving time, because we were anticipating those numbers to reach a couple of days before that actual community spread. We were even being told that they were going to hit. And we had told the principals and staff to start preparing for that pivot. It didn't happen. That's when the numbers really got off track. And that's when we were in talks with the health department, and they were telling us that they felt that because of the bottlenecking of the amount of testing, that it was inaccurate. Also, if we were to use the student numbers, we would have saw ourselves closing more often. Instead of just 2 times pivoting to remote, we would have saw ourselves on 4 days that we would hit that number to pivot to remote. So we saw the student numbers being really more in line to what was really happening when you gauged it with the health department and seeing what was coming. The reason we elected to keep teachers and staff out of that number is because we felt like in the next couple of weeks that would make a fallacy in our metric, because once teachers start getting the vaccine and becoming more immune, then we're putting 1,900 more people in there that would be what we considered invalid because they should not be getting the COVID virus. And therefore it would skew the numbers once more and really be an invalid number. So my comment to those people saying that we should take into community numbers, even listening to other places that we sought information from, as well as looking into our current metrics, seeing what was coming and listening to the health department, we felt a true indicator would be from the student number versus the community number. And I will take any comments on or questions with that.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Hickman, since we're going to student numbers, will we pivot? Will we pivot our pivot? But when we begin to pivot, will we keep that with just to a school? If a school's numbers reaches a certain point, will we just pivot that school with it and get away from pivoting the whole district?
Unfortunately, I just feel like at the heat of the moment right now, that when we start looking at student numbers, it's very indicative of what's happening in the community. So we still want to keep a measure for schools like we always have, looking at individual schools. As I said earlier, one of the biggest problems that we see right now is seeing our schools not being able to be staffed safely. And that is a huge concern because we want to make sure that we're staffing those schools safely. And when we can't, we have pivoted them. Most of the schools that we have pivoted in the past couple of months has been due to that staff safety and staffing concerns. I still would like to keep a district number out there because when we hit a threshold, I just feel like it can make it even worse if we continue to have school when we hit a certain threshold, and we have to set a number. And people ask why that number, and the number we were given at the beginning of the year was a 1%. And so they saw that as a high community spread. So that was why we chose that number.
Well, I guess my concern is if, because we're going away from this community number, let's just, we can pick any school, but let's say that Culleoka has 0 cases, but we hit that threshold for the rest of the county. My hope would be that that Culleoka could remain in person if they're not being affected, and that could be for any school. So my hope would be that we would start pivoting grade levels in schools, but we would get away from ever pivoting the entire district. But that's just my opinion.
And let me give you a rebuttal to that. It's because, and I might get a lot of pushback for what I'm about to say, when a school is showing that 0 and we do pivot the district, that's in hopes of keeping that community from having an outbreak, because I don't want the school to be the source of an outbreak where one minute they have 0, then the next minute, then in a day or two, it shows it's blown up. And that case has actually happened in your district of Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant, speaking specifically elementary, they kept 0 cases for a long time. But as soon as they got that first case, they saw a huge increase and within a week, they had to pivot because their cases had bloomed so much. So in my sense, by doing that district pivot, when you have those schools that are at 0, it will help that community to stay at a 0.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moore?
Oh, okay, I think I unmuted there. I just want to say I appreciate that the change in how we're doing this. I know previously I had voiced my concerns about how we were doing it. So I do appreciate staff kind of taking the initiative to look at this differently. And I want to make sure we reiterate that not only do we change the metric, we're not tied hard to that. I think the important thing that we should look at is that, and I would hope that staff is looking at this holistically and making those calls. Because frankly, it seems to me that if there may be a case where based on what you guys see on the ground and see in the classrooms, that you decide to call a grade level or some other aspect of the school out, even if we haven't hit the metric, because you guys feel like that's the safest thing for the students and staff. So I would hope that's what's happening. I know I'm glad we're moving away from numbers that someone else has, that we're now looking at, the staff is looking at what we need to do, what's best for students and staff. And I am happy to see that. So thank you very much, Mr. Hickman, for that.
And I will say again, we will continue for individual schools, continuing the route that we are doing, looking at individual schools, and we do that each day. And I would love to invite any board member to come up at 3 o'clock any day, and as we go through all of these, and it's interesting if you haven't been a part of that yet.
All right. Any other thing under COVID updates from staff or any of the board members?
Yes, sir. I'd like to speak.
Yes, sir, Mr. Howe.
So I just want to reiterate that, we are considering staff. Staff is very vital. Some teachers feel that because we don't put them into the matrix that we're not including them. But I just wanted on record that they're very vital to the whole situation. We can't have school without teachers. So if we can't staff a school and we have to pivot, that's the reason, sometimes. So teachers, we very much have to have them there, and we don't need to include them in a matrix, because if they're not there, we don't have school. So I just want to make that clear and make that point that we do care about teachers. We do want to make sure they're there. And when they're not, then that's when many times we have to pivot. At least at Culleoka, I know that's a fact. We've pivoted, 2 or 3 times because of staffing issues. So their staffing is very much important to us.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair Fulbright, I'd like to echo too that, I'd like to thank Mr. Perryman, because we have been squeezing money where we have, just anywhere we can find it, because we found it necessary that now we've gone out and we've bought the additional PPE other than what the state gave us, as in the N95s. And for any teacher out there, if they feel they need those, every school nurse has those. If they go to their school nurse and the school nurse says they're out, they should have already contacted us and let us know, but the teacher can let me or Mr. Perryman know that as well. And we'll make sure we'll get the more higher level PPE to those teachers.
Thank you very much.
I have a question, Mr. Fulbright.
Yes, Ms. Irvin.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Hickman, just again, what are we looking at now? 1% of our school's population? Is that what we're looking at for the metric to keep them in or go out? Because again, I know like a lot of parents are kind of wanting to know what to expect as far as that goes. Can you explain that just a little bit more? And I'm sorry if I missed that.
I'll start the conversation, and then I'm going to let Mr. Pointer kind of come in and follow up. Right now, the only metric, and there has been some confusion because kids were not coming back right now. The only one we have to go by is the community spread, because we don't have that baseline. What we're looking at currently, it's decreasing each day, but it just keeps popping. It's almost just like a zigzag line. So we want to look out for the best interest, and it's a balance for us, and it's hard decisions we have to make here, but we make them because we have to keep what's the best interest for students, as well as what is the best interest for our employees as well, because we want to keep our employees safe and our students as well. But we also understand part of keeping our students safe is they need to be in school. We have heard so many stories all the way down. I heard one today talking at Battle Creek Elementary about 3rd graders and some of the problems, social emotional problems that we had never seen before in the grade levels that low, that generally we would see those in high school and possibly middle school. So we know the impact of not being at school as well does for children. So we try to weigh both of those in when we make these decisions. And Mr. Pointer, if you would like to talk a little bit about the new metric moving forward.
I guess I would start by saying, did Mr. Hickman answer everyone's question? Because if he did, then I won't waste it. I won't take any more of your time on the Zoom meeting.
Are there any other questions?
Well, Chris, I just asked what the metric was. I mean, like, is it 1% of the county's schools population? Yeah. Is that what we're looking at, or?
No, the metric before was 1% of the previous metric was 1% of the county, Murray County population. The metric that we're looking at now is, as far as pivoting, is 1% of our enrolled student population. So our
in person.
Right. Yeah. So our student population is like 12,000 and whatever, something odd. And then we got, 3,000 plus on remote. So, and it fluctuates. So what we did was we say roughly around 10,000 is how we determined the 1% metric based off of 10,000 in-person enrolled students.
So is it then roughly when we hit like 1,000 students with COVID? That seems high.
It'd be more like
no,
100.
Oh, no. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. Like it's not, it's 1%. Okay.
Yeah,
so it'd be like 100 students.
It would be
100 students are
yes, that's correct.
countywide impacted.
Correct.
And Ms. Irvin, just to kind of tell you what the impact that means is that the numbers that we were using that were given to us by the state, we pivoted twice. The numbers that if we would have been using, if we used our own students, it would have been 4 times. And even with that, some of them would have been earlier than the actual ones that the state gave us.
I gotcha. Have we thought about, this may be way preliminary, but just something I want to put out there, because obviously what I keep hearing, and I know you keep hearing, and what we all share is we want to keep these kids in school. I just want to ask that again, and I know you're doing this and I appreciate your hard work, but are we considering even like if I'm asking about an AB schedule. I don't know how that would tie into this. If it's a way to keep us in even part-time and social distance, because I've been reading up a lot, like you say, on everything. And I do know that social distancing is the #1 recommendation over everything. So I want my kids there every day they can be there. If that's 5 days a week, that's my #1 goal. But if it's 3 days or 2 days, that would be secondary to being full remote. So I don't know when that comes into play, but just want to share that.
And let me speak on that one first, and Mr. Gaines may want to talk a little bit. We're already in talks with that, but one of the things I wanted to make certain with my staff here is that one of the things that the parents have asked us for is consistency. Just be consistent in whatever we do. So that has why we have always, when we said this is our number, this is what we're going to stick to. If this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to stick to. So we feel at this point, we are working on a way to do AB because this is going to be a long haul couple of months. But with that said, many people think that by saying we're going to AB is just a snap of the finger, a flip of the switch. But there is a lot of things that go into that. And also you have to think about how do we get students in that rhythm and what do they need to know? So that's what we've been doing for we did a test run with Spring Hill because we thought that we could actually start doing that with our middle and high. And now we're working through with our elementaries now in staff and trying to figure out how can we make that a possibility instead of having to pivot. But with that said, just like we said earlier, we want to give parents notification. We want to be consistent how we do it. And we want to make sure that measure is right when we do decide to go that way. So it won't be a mess, if you will, once we flip that switch. So it takes a lot of consideration. Like I said, we're about ready for our middle and high school to flip that switch. But the elementary, who we were most concerned about, it's a lot more into that than just the high schools and the middle schools.
So with that said, I'd like to also ask, at one point in time, I thought we had mentioned we were going to do everything we can to keep especially like our K2 population and our special ed populations in school. Will they tie into that 1% student population metric, or will they? So basically, if we go remote, are those populations going remote also?
Ms. Ventura, she may or may not be on here still, but we have already been having special ed. I think she alluded to it. Mr. Perryman wasn't happy about the busing because we've continued to make sure we had the opportunities to get our special, it was Ms. Inc. that said that, our special populations, those. And then we're also working with our K2 to do that, to make sure we can try to get those in. Some of the concerns that we've heard from parents on doing a K2 that we're trying to take in consideration too is most of them have older or younger siblings and they're worried about how are we going to manage our child care if we just go K2 and they have a 3rd grade, things like that. So we're trying to really work through, we're working with the Boys and Girls Club. And I do want to give a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club because they have been so flexible working with us so we can make sure that we can still provide that child care for the parents.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else with the COVID update?
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Actually, just a brief comment. I just hope, as I was going to say, I appreciate that when we did go to remote for this first week, that it seemed there was ample notice for that, and I appreciate that as a parent. I would just hope that if that comes up again as we continue to look at this as it evolves, I would hope that we continue to give ample and good communication out to both staff and the parents. I think that's an important thing, to make sure staff is informed of these things and communicated well in advance as much as we possibly can, and make sure that, again, good communication will go a long way for all of us. I think to make us all feel better about these decisions that are not easy, and I understand that. So please continue with good communication. I'm going to say it a million times. Please continue with that.
Mr. Moore, it was our intent to make sure that faculty staff was to know beforehand, and things happened, and so we had to kind of make sure all.
I appreciate that, and again, we can't undo what's been done, but moving forward, if we can just make sure, I know staff would appreciate that, and again, everyone appreciates good communication.
All right, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. I don't see any instructional low bids, operations low bids, purchases over 10,000. See the FYI there. Any other announcements or business that we need to tend to?
Hey, I do. I forgot to name two other people that we had some movement in our personnel. Tanya Potts was moved to the interim principal of McDowell due to Brecken Pennell applied and was given the job here at Central Office as middle school coordinator. So congratulations to both of them.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure they'll both do great jobs. You can see the schedule for the next couple of weeks as it is there. Next time we will get together for the board work session on January 19th. Is there anything else on behalf of the board?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned. Thank you. I wanted to welcome you.
Add that to the motion to approve the agenda. Just that when everybody votes to approve the agenda, that they're also affirming the need for conducting the meeting via Zoom.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Then I'll put that off then.